to Bespoken in the International Contemporary Ensemble's series Pathways, Art and Technology. This series serves as a platform for education and empowerment to break down the barriers to using technology in an artist practice, specifically for self-identifying female, non-binary, and trans women artists at the intersection of art and technology, while helping to make the introduction to these artists for those who may not already be familiar with their art. Today, we are very excited to feature two artists across multiple disciplines in the realm of technology, including music producer and video ethnographer Adele Fournet, and artist TYGAPAW, and learn more about their art, creative processes, and work with technology. So a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. We ask that everyone remain muted during the session and to feel free to drop any questions into the chat throughout. We will try to get to as many of them at the end of the hour as we can. We have viewers joining us also from YouTube Live, so a big welcome to all of you. But for those of you who are joining us in the Zoom, after the first hour session is over, we will branch into breakout rooms to dive into more specific questions in each room, one focused on sound and one focused on video. But before we begin, we're going to tell you just a little bit about our organization. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you my co-founder of Bespoken and incredible pianist, Eunbi Kim.
Thank you, Gina. In 2018, Gina and I launched Bespoken, a mentorship program for women in classical, contemporary, and jazz music. Through professional one-on-one mentoring and group workshops, the program equips fellows with skill-building tools and support to develop successful ideas, goals, and projects, and to create rewarding careers in music. Over the past 2 years, Bespoken has mentored 27 fellows in the areas of creative project development, performance and educational opportunities, marketing and branding, job applications and interviews, while encouraging them to advocate for themselves and their art. We currently have 18 fellows, some of whom are joining us today. I'm going to now turn it over to Bridget Bergen, Production and Communications Coordinator of International Contemporary Ensemble, to tell you more about their organization.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's so great to see everyone's Zoom tiles and the Zoom call right now, and welcome everyone on YouTube Live. We're so excited to continue this partnership with Bespoken, and even more excited that TYGAPAW and Adele can join us again tonight to talk about their practice. So with the commitment to cultivating a more curious and engaged society through music, the International Contemporary Ensemble, as a commissioner and performer at the highest level, amplifies creators whose work propels and challenges how music is made and experienced. The ensemble's 36 members are featured as soloists, chamber musicians, commissioners, and collaborators with the foremost musical artists of our time. I'm excited to say that tonight's event is a part of our Tuesdays at 7 series, which is a new series, a weekly opportunity for the ensemble to engage with our audience and collaborators and enjoy extraordinary new music together and engage in conversations together. And yeah, so I'm excited to introduce TYGAPAW as our first speaker tonight. A little bit about TYGAPAW. She is a multidisciplined musician, producer, and DJ, born and raised in Mandeville, Jamaica, based in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. TYGAPAW infuses her Jamaican ancestry into a lush and aggressive musical styling, perfect for the inclusive spaces she so often curates. Her versatile production is a clear representation of her individuality, queer, Black, and fearless. She's the founder of Fake Accent, which started in 2014 as a monthly queer club night based in Brooklyn, and has been developed into a record label in 2019, centering Black electronic music artists. Paper Magazine listed her as one of the 50 LGBTQ artists you should prioritize in 2018, and she is one of the shesaid.so Alternative Power 100 Music List 2019 honorees. TYGAPAW sets the bar high for the first release on her Fake Accent imprint with her latest EP, Handle with Care. Visceral noise, relentless club rhythms, and intimate vocal samples collide across 5 tracks of uncompromising body music, a searingly bold statement from one of NYC's and Jamaica's finest. So thank you so much, TYGAPAW, for joining us. And I'm wondering if we can actually start with seeing a sample of one of your recent works.
Sure, I can share that right now. And this is through You Mentioned Handle with Carrie. Yeah, that's my first EP that I released on my Fake Accent label. So this is one of the tracks. There. Yeah, to speak a little bit more about the process of baking. I mean, kind of like a good timing wise for me because I'm currently working, or I finished my full length album, which will be coming out in October, not first week of November, and that is it's kind of I wanted to share some of those sessions because like I really went like dove deeper into subgenres of like techno with like jungle and what I've been using. I was just like I just feel like yeah maybe like I'll just use a session that like is already released, so I don't have any complications with my the label I'm releasing with. But this right now everything is I'll just like drop everything down so that you can kind of see what I'm working with and how the process kind of like is for me starting a track, creating tracks is I'll just mostly it's about feeling, it's about energy, it's about vibe, but I like to start I think on this album I really leaned I think I would like more melodic elements I would like use and start with them. But some of the drum tracks, so it's like a really heavy kick. If we're zooming in on that and try to yeah, this is like the main drum kick. And let's see what else. Layering is key with me and getting. I mean, I kind of went OD. I know there's another session, like my mix session, which I have problems finding because also once you like you have a lot of like content and you're working on a lot of music, organizing is key to so you can find older sessions because I ran into this same issue, not being able to find the right session to show you. But right now, I guess I could just like break down each track for what I'm like and isolate each thing. So this massive, yeah, it's like a bass. I sound pretty low, but like it's a bass line. I'm using massive plugin, and the presets for massive are really good, and I lean on using plugins because of how the accessibility of it. They're cheaper, more affordable, but the quality of sound is high, and And yeah, I can like really do a lot of sound design and sculpting within each plugin. But I'm learning like to with my drum tracks, like I use a bit like my process is like I'm starting to use drum machines like the Digitac and the MC505, which I really like to do my drums that way. So the neck going on here, I think in the beginning is that, yeah, that like sparkly metallic sound is like a method of like me layering on these effects sounding like more particle sounds that give this edge. I would say like a little tension, spatial tension in music. Um, and that bell sound, melody, lead melody, stuff like that. And that drum, like, right, so within that drum rack, just right, so have a drum rack for percussion sounds better. One, the sequencing one. Is where I have that other. So it's just stacking for me. I love to, with each melodic element and creating like counter melodies and harmonizing the different parts to create the composition. And then my beat is like, because I'm very heavy into how my music is presented, which is mostly like club settings and like played out, and so I really heavy on layering drums and let that be kind of like a back on creating like progressive elements. More like softer melodic effects. That's like a drum kick that is a part of Baltimore and Jersey culture, that like kind of kick that is like a little bit grittier and just has this like more solid sound to it. So I really like it.
Yeah. TYGAPAW, this is, sorry, mean to interrupt you, but it's a little bit hard to hear you with the music.
While it's playing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that feedback from another lecture.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
so
I mean, this is awesome because I really want to hear more of how you're stacking and layering all these sounds to, create counter melodies and harmonies in your work. So sorry, if you don't mind just maybe repeating.
No worries. Absolutely. Thanks for stopping me so that you could hear. Yes. So what I was speaking on is that you can kind of get a grasp of what's going on as I go through each part. And when I'm talking about, like, when I'm starting and picking apart, like, where's the starting point? I will probably start like this main melody that is going on right here. This actually, yeah. I think I started it with that, and then build the counter melodies on top of that, and bass elements to it. as I go, and I'm not a trained musician, so I use my ear. I lean very heavily on my ear when coming up with melodies. So oh, this one on track 5, kind of like, I like it. It's weird. It's kooky. It creates that like it sounds like a Moog synthesizer, and yeah, I'll just try to find sounds that, to me, I have like, it feels like inspiring, and then I can work a lot, like, because I like to put sounds that like don't necessarily fit well together and make them fit together. Like the one that I was talking about with this sounds really spooky, and it's metallic. What's happening is like it's creating like this intensity, but it's like very subtle. But it all with the melody, with all the elements going together, it it creates, it's a part of the composition, it creates this like tension that's very intentional for me. And with each, like I'm layering the impact, the drums. So maybe I'll just like put this all together. And I think what I have on them is a delay. Just weird, it's in there. And then a main drum kick, which is another with that Baltimore Dirty Club rhythm style of kick drum that has a bit more syncopation to it than straight 4/4. Which, oh, and I was speaking on like making music, like the way how I would mix something or present it is with the intention of like where the music is going to live, what the space is going to live in. And so with electronic music that's mostly that lives within like club environments and like are like played out in big sound systems or in mixes or whatever, is that it leans heavy on this like the percussive elements, but I love to incorporate melodic aspects, so it feels a little bit more whole, like in the whole entire experience. Sometimes the intention of like club or electronic music, or the way it's DJ'd, is that like it leans heavy on percussion because it's like easier to mix, and there's a muddy, like when DJs want to layer on 2 tracks together and play them simultaneously, then they're not having clashing of sounds. And so, but like the way how I kind of like to incorporate the 2 worlds that I live in, like this club world, and then the more where I've like my intention is I love for my music to potentially live within scores and like on film and whatnot. So I'm very conscious of that. And then let's see, what else is that? One of my, there's something like, so this line that you see, that's just the red, is an automation, and it's just like a simple automation of track volume. So I want it to what am I doing? Yeah, just a mixer track volume. It's a fade in, and to gradually have this like sound come into the mix, which it sounds like this. Very intense distortion, data, like sound that feels like, the reason why I'm showing, if you can't hear me, the reason why I'm showing this track particularly, because it moves like like it has parts to it, like it has a introduction, which is like setting up this like uncertainty where you're not like quite sure is what's happening, and then it's moving in this direction that it's just building. So it's a lot of parts that it's like leading up to, and to a climax, which is towards the end, where I would love, oh yeah, so you see the density that I have going on towards the end of the track, where it's like way more layered, and yeah, I'll just keep going through it so that you can see what's going on and play each part. Here's this so that is like these two let's see, track 11 and 12 are responding to each other. So it's a call and response to with these distortion, heavily distorted sounds. And I just play them together. This is how they sound. So it's creating a melody and a counter melody within the same type of sound is also a thing that I like to play with. And people are afraid of, like, I don't know if people are just afraid of distortion, but distortion adds so much texture, and yeah, it's just and emotion. Like it's something that I really love playing with. I have another automation that goes on. I think it's just like, yeah, just see what this is giving me here. And this sounds like another texture of ambient, creating like just layering. Honestly, like in music is, it's just the intention behind it is like to create the body, like give the track some body, and like so it creates fullness, even though there's like nothing really melodic happening within that track, but it's really important to, because it's adding like that extra layer of like texture to the whole composition. And then as I go down, I think I have more things going on here. And it just gets very intense, and I can play everything out now, and so you can get a to see what it sounds like all together. Yeah, as I yeah, so that's pretty much a breakdown, kind of like a walkthrough of that song in particular, and yeah, kind of like giving an idea of like how I start, finish, like, and work through the different parts of a track. Like it can be, I think the most difficult parts for me sometimes are bass lines. Coming up with bass line, the lower end kicks, the percussions. Like I've gotten better at working with percussive elements. I'm not a drummer, but programming drums is like it's like a practice makes perfect situation with that. And yeah, just continuing to learn things as I go along. But my practice is usually like building out the tracks in that manner.
Yeah, I mean, I just love seeing this session open and you walking us through the track. Like, I have so many specific questions right now, but I'm going to stop myself from asking all these things. But kind of zooming out a little bit, how were you introduced to using Ableton in your practice? Because I remember the last session that we had together, you mentioned that you actually taught yourself how to use this software. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about that kind of learning journey with the software in your practice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a journey. I think once you decide, because I initially had Logic, and years ago, maybe this is like 10 plus years, and I found Logic to be difficult because it's linear. Most DAWs are linear, and then they're just like a lot of like navigating. We're like figuring out where everything is, but also understanding how the signal chaining like goes in mixing and adding effects to tracks and everything. And I find that Ableton it's way more user friendly, even though the interface at first looks a bit challenging, like you're not quite sure what's going on. But yeah, as I sat with once I for instance, if I just press tab over here, then you see in this view that I have just way more flexibility. Why is sometimes I'm wondering why my session looks like that. Okay, and pour this down a bit. And I love session view because that's another place where I start to kind of it's like a sketch pad. It's like the page that I use as a sketch pad to sort through my ideas. So I feel like workflow is efficient. It's way more efficient for me in Ableton. Some people might prefer FL Studio, or there's a plethora of what's available now in terms of digital audio workstation. So it just took kind of like a lot of watching tutorials, especially when approaching remixing, and how powerful Ableton is when it comes to warping and getting knowing how to do things is just like finding the resources that you need with online. There's like endless resources on YouTube around specific things that you would like to learn within the program. And yeah, it's just kind of like tailoring my education around that. Like you can customize what it is that you specifically want to learn, because it's one of those programs that is boundless in possibilities around learning how to use it, and not necessarily having a right or wrong way, which I like. And so it's good for experimenting on like how you want your workflow to work. And yeah, like just being patient with myself, because I had strong suits in coming up with melodies, because my brain probably like listening, consuming all the pop music growing up. You just, it sticks. But like other things that are important to like really building a complete and comprehensive track is a challenge. Like I'm not strong with bass lines. I wasn't strong with percussive elements and drum racks and working around that and creating drum patterns. But as you have to set yourself up to, like, if those are things that you want to get better at, it's just not being afraid to like approach it, work at it, and build on it with each project that you work, because it's like a learning experience every single time.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think that speaks to a lot of us on this call right now, of just kind of teaching yourself and having the confidence to really enter into this world of trying something new and always educating yourself. Do you have any other music samples that you wanted to show us, or another preview into one of your sessions?
Very easy one.
Okay.
That was the last release that I that I did. Let's see. That I did. And I did within a day. So it's like it's just kind of like I released the EP over a course of a day to meet, like I want, like in response to a lot of things that were was happening in terms of police brutality and during the pandemic, and around Black trans lives, and just the erasure and lack of just like agency around speaking to things, injustices that tends to, within the Black community as well, like tend to be just glossed over and not acknowledged. So I felt very compelled to write to the times and kind of like respond musically, as we as artists mostly do when we feel silenced or helpless in certain situations that we can't change something that's systemic. So I came across, and I love to do, and I've done work in this realm of, I would call it like, I don't even know if I have a name for it. I call it, it's just conscious electronic music. Like it's just when I want to engage the listener into a narrative that I've found that I want to present in a new way musically, that it can reach a broader audience, sort of thing. So I found a TED Talk, and it's around, the author of it is an incredible trans man, and his words just like hit very like point, like I could relate and connect with what they were saying. And so I wanted to create a composition for it, and so I went about doing that. And this is one of the songs, like it's like a 3-part EP, 3 tracks, and I kind of like presented it in a way, well, as a complete continuous story, the way how the EP is laid out. And this is the second track. And I'll just play it at first so you can hear.
Scene 2. I am with my therapist, the one whose testimony I must rely on to declare me man enough to have my documents changed, the one who is to be believed. Despite my own declarations that I am not this body, that this body is neither hers nor yours to define, I sit with this doctor, and she fills out a form for me. And when considering what all I've done to affirm my gender, has the patient's gender presentation aligned with their gender identity? She decides that my gender presentation is more neutral, really. While I sit there, mind you, head to toe in clothing from the section of the store where the dress buttons go down.
Stop it right there. Are you hearing the audio okay? Is it everyone? So with this piece particularly, it starts with DL. DL, I want to say the DL Wright is the author who is speaking, who gave a compelling TED Talk and around transness and the Black identity. And I was moved like wholeheartedly, and so I just knew I wanted to compose something to it. So it's kind of like a flash of lightning, and in a response to your immediate environment, what is politically happening. A lot of things came into play while I was constructing the composition, and I just wanted the vocals to be highlighted as much as possible, so not allow for the listener to hear what's being said, but as well as like aspects, the undertones of like the beat and everything to help sort of the listener to stay guided along the journey was my intention. So so this is a less stacked, I would call it less stacked session, because it really is about the vocal performance of the track. And so I have been leaning heavily into loving breaks, using break beats and breaks in my music, because I just also around the artistry around drumming and Black drumming, and the understanding the history behind the funky drummer and the break, the amen break, and wanting to incorporate and using that and presenting it in a new light, in a different way. So I have this like go through each. So I have this kind of like I kept it very simple in regards to the melodic elements, just because I feel like the vocal is carrying the brunt of the performance. And then I have a break that's like a top, you could call it like a top layer of a break going to layer in with this break. It's like a kick that's like, and I'll steadily build it. And some what happens with like percussion is they can not play well together. Certain frequencies won't play that well together. But I have like a way I like to experiment with beats is to really like, I'm a cook that puts everything in a pot and, you know, hopes for the best sometimes. So this giving more a ravey loop, kick loop that are all, I like to work with audio when it comes to my drums, and I think a lot of I think it's just something that's, I don't know, I play back and forth with sometimes, but I do appreciate working with audio outside of MIDI. MIDI I work with a lot with using VSTs when it comes to melodies, but with the drums, I can like, I don't know, like cut, like, you know, like do edits very quickly with, you know, like if I need to just mute something out, drop something out, if I want to chop things, yeah, it's just a little bit more flexible.
Yeah. And sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, because this is so awesome, and I think we all want to see more behind this track, but just for the sake of time,
okay,
I want to make sure that we have enough time to, you know, hear from Adele. But thank you so much, TYGAPAW, for showing us your work and sharing it with us. And we'll make sure to send over links to TYGAPAW's albums. And yeah, I'll pass the mic over to Gina.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I was actually listening to TYGAPAW's albums today, all day in my apartment, so it was super fun. And I am excited to introduce our next speaker. We have Adele Fournet, who is a music producer, video director, music scholar, and holds a PhD in ethnomusicology from New York University. As a writer, she focuses on the intersections of gender, technology, labor, and aesthetics in popular music. Adele's women-led nonprofit media organization, BitRosie, supports the work of female and gender nonconforming artists to disseminate the work of women using music technology now and to ensure their cultural relevance for future generations. So it is my pleasure to welcome Adele to join us.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Hi,
really
Adele.
good gallery view, I think that'd be fun. Okay.
You can see everyone's faces.
Yeah.
Great.
Hey. Cool. Well, I was like, so I have basically two branches of my work, one more in video and one in music, but they're both very interrelated. But I was thinking it might be good to dovetail with the TYGAPAW presentation to go with the music stuff first, because I do actually work in Logic, so it might be interesting to sort of compare the two DAWs. Does that sound good?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
If you want to just start us off with that sort of cross fade into your world.
Exactly. Totally. So let me give a little bit of context first. So for the past, I've had a long journey with production. I think the last time I was with you guys, I talked more about like how I got to now with video a little bit more. But with production, it's been a similar journey. A lot of trying different DAWs, trying what works, working a lot from home studios. I think I started recording my band in college using Pro Tools, and then eventually I like graduated to using Logic. I'm still using Logic. I would say this is more of like my own personal journey and struggle with production, is that like for a long time I felt like I wanted to be more professional, and I think that speaks a lot to like the sort of capitalist culture that we live in. And a big part of what that meant to me was I need to be able to produce and engineer other artists. Like I had this desire to work with artists that are not just myself. And so over the last year and a half, I started working, producing, co-producing, and engineering. I have a recording studio here in Brooklyn. And so, yeah, I feel like, first of all, I just want to share like maybe one of the tracks I was working on with another artist. Okay, so I do share screen, share computer sound, and so this is a group called Group Work, and they make this really fun, catchy sort of 80s inspired synth pop, and it was interesting because they actually started out, I was having a moment a few years ago where I wanted to get out of the computer more. So I got this Roland TR-505 drum machine built in 1986, the year I was born. And I was like programming beats on the actual rhythm composer. And then they got that and wrote this tune over it. So I'm just gonna play a little bit of the track. You guys hear it? So yeah, you can check them out, Group Work, Ashreya Gupta and Marianne Keeler. Something about, like for me, I tend to work, I like to work with female artists, female identifying artists. And just this kind of, like Marianne and Ash are two high school teachers. They teach high school here in the city. And I think it's really exciting to create platforms for like different kinds of narratives within pop music. So this sort of alt pop world where these two high school teachers can come together and create music and have shows and speak about their experiences as teachers, which is not something that you really hear a lot in pop necessarily. So One thing I did was, instead of just recording this directly to Logic, which would give me a lot of problems, like sort of quantizing the audio, because like even though this is sort of 2-tempo, it would sort of drift and shift. So what I did is I ended up sampling this and then recreating the beat within Logic. So let me just see if I can pull that up really quick. So yeah, so what I did is I went through and sampled all of the individual drums. Oops, getting myself confused with this. Okay, here we go. So like you can hear each one of these, like so each of the drums that's represented on the drum machine, I sampled so that then when I created the project, I could, okay, close. I could sort of recreate it with MIDI instead of having it the original loop, which would be this, which would just give me some problems. Where it would start to get out of sync with the rest of the band. So yeah, that was sort of kind of like going from analog and then having digital to analog back to analog, or no, analog to digital, yeah. So yeah, that's a track that I was working on with, we recorded their whole album last January before COVID started, and it's about to come out. And then, but COVID started, and something that I realized was that I was really prioritizing the work of other artists over my own work. And I think that COVID really gave me the opportunity to sort of reprioritize my own work again. And so the project that I'm working on now is like a sort of 70s soft rock project in Spanish that I have with my partner Felipe. We've been playing music together for many years, and we kind of just sort of came to this new sound thanks in large part to having more free time and less ability to take on as many gigs. So it's really been kind of great in that sense. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little about, I'll play a little bit of this track. It's completely unmixed. So this is sort of, you guys can see this, right? Okay, cool. This is, you know, the arrange window in Logic. Like TYGAPAW was saying, much more linear. You don't have this option of the sort of scene view. Actually, Logic just came up with a new version where you can do scene view, but I don't use it. So if you're more of an Ableton person, it translates a little bit better to Logic. Yeah, so basically it's, you play and you move forward and you stack things horizontally. I mean, you stack things vertically. So I'll just play a little bit of this track. Yeah, so I use a lot of instrumental, like analog audio recording. So as opposed to using a lot of MIDI, I tend to go more recently, I've been going a lot harder on just recording everything, having live drums, having live bass, sort of instrumental tracks, which fits with the era of the sort of 70s style production. I started recording a lot to tape starting last year, and sort of getting more into that like live band sound has been something that's been really exciting for me. But I do still use a little bit of MIDI. So for example, like these strings, oops. I created those in MIDI thinking, oh, I'm going to replace that with a synth part. And then I could never get a live synth to sound as cool as the MIDI. So I was like, okay, screw it, I'm going to leave it. So what I wanted to show was the way I work a lot with live drums is I will record a real drummer and then go through, and it actually relates a lot to how I edit video, which is an interesting thing. I go through and I find kind of like the grooviest measures. So I'm essentially sampling what I've recorded in the studio. I find the grooviest measures, and then I'll like extract those and loop those and find fills and whatnot. So I'll just show you guys a little bit of that process. So this is a project alternative. So essentially you can kind of create like alternative versions of the same song. So you're not having to like create new folders or new projects every time. It's kind of just like an alternate take kind of. Yeah, so basically what I originally did was I created like a MIDI loop. So this is my original beat. My God, the other drummer is still playing live with that. That's why it's confusing. Okay. So then, so this is it. So I just programmed that using MIDI, and then I gave that to the drummer, and I was like, I kind of like this vibe. Can you sort of recreate that, but with real drums? So then he recorded this. And so then what I do is essentially go through and I color code it. So like the blue is the take, and then the green are the measures that I really like. And so then I'll create like loops out of the sort of tightest, most in the pocket parts of the groove. And then I'll put that together as the beat. And then I'll import it. I'll create like a new project alternative. Don't save. And then I have the drums. So I'll construct the drums and then record everything else on top of that: bass, Wurlitzer, vocals, guitar, etc. So yeah, so you can kind of see here in my drum folder that I have all the green ones. So there's like a slightly different, like teal green, that's the intro beat, and then there's the verse beat. And then I think towards the end, like I had a slightly different color green because he added the ride cymbal in. So, so yeah. And then I'll like, sometimes I'll add a little bit more percussion. So like here, oops, sorry. I usually create folders for the drums so you don't have to see everything all at once. So I'll add in a few like MIDI things to round out the beat. And with everything. This kind of like tightness of a programmed drum loop, but it's live, so it has this sort of live quality too. So yeah, I can just show you. I just want to show one more quickly, just like another track that we did like that with that method.
Absolutely.
that one is also like just a 2-bar loop of the same drums. And it was actually a session where we had the drummer in and like the beat he had been playing wasn't it. And then he just did a little like a messing around kind of a thing. And that became the loop of the entire song. And so like the driver of change in the song is not so much the drums, it's just like the harmonic change, the change from like section to section, the arrangements, stuff like that. Yeah, so does that, I guess I can, does that make sense? Like, do you guys have questions about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really touches on the point of what a lot of our participants and viewers are experimenting with themselves these days is really what programs are everyone using and finding most useful to create the kinds of music and the projects that they're potentially interested in creating themselves, and how to stack and layer these projects, and what are the beginning starting points and or kind of more advanced points of how you take your work to the next level using it. So I think all of that layering that you were showcasing between how you're focusing first on MIDI and then using real instruments, and how you can actually mix both to create those projects, and or do all recorded and or just MIDI production, I think is like something very, very relevant to this time when we're all at home and kind of working on our own. But I know too that you do a lot with video, and so also something that I think everyone is looking more into now is how do I create video, and what does the process for that look like? So maybe we could kind of dive a little bit into the process for that.
Great. Sure. So, I mean, what I was thinking is there's so much potential work to share, but I think what I could do, if you guys are interested in seeing more nuts and bolts, I could would you be interested in seeing a clip of a work and then seeing like inside the Premiere project? Would that be useful or interesting? Maybe.
Absolutely. Let's see a little bit of the video project.
Okay, cool.
We can go from there.
Great. Okay, so I have this web series about female gender nonconforming music producers and engineers. And the most recent episode was with a producer named Quilla, who is wonderful. And so, yeah, just a little bit about, I guess this whole project came out of my dissertation research on gender and music technology in the recorded music industry. And one of the themes that kind of really emerged throughout the course of my research was this issue of motherhood and mothering, and how that can be really hard to manage and like incorporate into being a freelancer, especially a freelancer in the digital arts. So I kind of came to this realization that with everyone I was talking to, 75 plus people, like only 5 people that I talked to in a very wide age range were actually moms. So it kind of started to feel like this field, especially in a country like the United States that doesn't have a lot of social support for mothers or for paid leave or anything like that, this is a really huge problem for people working in the arts. So I started focusing more on, okay, well, if this is a problem, but where are the moms who are music producers and what is it like for them? So here's Quilla. I'm not going to say anything more. I need to share my screen again, right? Yes, okay. Okay. Sure, at the beginning.
It's important for representation. It's important to see women of color doing technical things. We can be really strong in caregiving roles and management roles, but we can also be very strong in technical roles too. So that's really important to see that, and I'm proud of it. My name is Ana Luisa Dano, and my artist name is Quilla. It's from the Quechua word quilla, which means moon. I'm a songwriter, vocalist, keyboardist, music producer, educator. So right now we're in Greensboro, North Carolina. I've been here for close to 8 years. I'm originally from Montreal, Canada, born and raised. mother's from Peru, my dad's French Canadian, and my husband's from here, North Carolina. Some of the most vivid memories from my childhood was when my mom would have parties in our house and there's like a lot of dancing, like salsa music, all different kinds, and I made a point of it to start exploring it. You know, even if I'm not trained as a percussionist, in my body, does it make it move? Does it make me dance? Does it make me groove? And so that helps me integrate those rhythms into my music. So I grew up dancing. I was a gymnast until I was 17. That's where I developed my sense of musicality, and rhythm was like the interface with dance. I finally found my friend Isha, my new friend, who is an amazing choreographer, and Isha choreographed my music video, Sagittarius, and I just love how it turned out. Isha introduced me to her friend Ladarius Parker, who's also a very gifted choreographer. And he worked with me to choreograph a show I did recently at Elsewhere Museum. All of those things have led me to understand that slowly I need to integrate dance back into like my music performance.
We've come this far and traveled to the stars. Sagittarius.
I've always felt really enamored by the songwriting creative process itself, the emotional impact, the meaning, the creativity. Like even more than releasing music, I'm really fascinated and passionate by the process that goes into creating each track. And so that's all production. I really wanted to do it myself, but I had a lot of internal fears and a lot of mental barriers. For my first album, Beautiful Hybrid, I did a little bit of production, but it was mostly me working with various different producers for each track. It was a tough process because I had a sound in my head that I wanted, but I was not able to achieve it technically. For my second album, I really did 100% of the production myself, because in between the two albums, I was really learning. By the time I was getting to the last few songs on the album, I was flowing in this workflow and like feeling that I had like arrived at a new chapter in production. And I'm mostly self-taught.
The will to believe. Hermitude and jeweled crowns. I'm tired of my dreams.
When Daddy comes to pick you up, I'm going to make sure he brings you the puffs.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
I get a lollipop too.
Yeah, you get lots of puffs.
And another lollipop and a cup.
Oh, you want lollipops?
Lollipop and a cup.
Also, being a mom is challenging time-wise. I only have much shorter bits of time now to devote to my craft. So I have to be very intentional. I used to be able to work at night after she would go to sleep. Like the first year of her life, I would work after she went to bed. And work through the night. And then I stopped doing that because I couldn't do it anymore. Off we go to school. Being a mom and a music producer allows me to express my own emotional landscape, my own ideas, my own creativity, and not just be fully identified as a mom, which I love being a mom, but I also love being a creative person.
Okay, so you guys can watch the rest of this on BitRosie website or on Facebook, all the social stuff. And what I'm gonna do is really just not so great at this screen sharing thing. Show you the inside of that project. You guys can see this Premiere project? Okay, cool. So I was just looking at this earlier and I realized that I have the same method that I use in Logic, essentially. So I go through all of it and I color code it. And so basically what I'll do is I usually use an interview footage as a sort of backbone of giving it structure. So I'll listen through, you can kind of see, and I'll color code the parts that I think are cool. So I'm rose colored is usually this is great. Mango colored is maybe. And then the blue and the green is when I'm talking, I'm not gonna use that stuff. So yeah, so I sort of chop it up. And yeah, so
sorry. Music production, it's a skill that you develop over time. So it could take years to be comfortable editing.
Yeah, so good stuff in there. So then what I'll do is I'll take all of that stuff and kind of create a rough cut. So these are all different sequences within the same project folder within Adobe Premiere. And then what I'll do is I'll recolor code thematically. So with this one, I think I did like rose stays as like introductory, nice sound bit material. And then blue is like personal background and biography, where she lives, where is she from, etc. Yellow is the whole bit about, yellow is a personal background, biography, etc. And this is, what am I saying? No, yellow is dancing. So dance and embodiment. Okay. I think because I'm a social scientist, this is how I kind of was trained. Like you sort of codify your field notes. Like you do lots of observation and you go through and you're like, oh, I see this thematic thing. I'm gonna like group these things together based on everything that the person is telling you about their lives and experiences. And then, so like this section, pink is, what is pink? Pink is like talking about her history with production and struggling with like how she learned and being in very male-dominated scenes and being self-taught and stuff like that. And then this is, green is mom stuff. So anything that has to do with work-life balance, being a mom, how you negotiate that, and all that kind of stuff. And then this is her work. So we didn't get to this yet. It's like her work, her full-time job is as a linguistic anthropologist with endangered languages. So there's a whole sequence about that. The organization is called Living Tongues, very cool. And then there's a sequence, this orange sequence is her getting ready for a gig, sort of continuing to tell about her process. But there's like a very specific sequence that I'm working with there. And then this pink stuff is at the end has anything to do with collaboration with other women, teaching, mentoring, sort of her views on like being a woman in production and what like sort of the activism and the activist work she does around that. So, you know, that ends up being a pretty long sequence that I then have to whittle away down to like, this is clean cut number 4. So you had clean cut 1, clean cut 2, clean cut 3, clean cut 4. And then clean cut 4 is the one where I actually do all the automation, and then I export the audio and mix it separately in a DAW. So not mixing audio within Adobe Premiere. And then the final phase is color correction and stuff. So I just thought it was really interesting to kind of look between these two between the Logic session and the Premiere session, and realize that I do the same kind of like coding or like seeking out parts and then color coding them. Yeah, any like questions or anything? I can keep going, but.
There was one question about the video about, do you know the arc of your story for the video ahead of time, or is that something that develops as you kind of walk through that process and as the music develops, or which comes first?
Yeah, I definitely take a very grounded approach. So the narrative arc grows out of what she says and the footage itself. I mean, obviously I'm coming in with a certain sense of where it could go because I'm the person who did all the filming. So I know what I have essentially. But a lot of times I'll forget, or even when I'm interviewing someone, like I'm kind of like worried about the audio sounding okay and the video looking okay. And like I've gotten better over time, but I'm still kind of like all hands on deck, like multitasking. So a lot of times I'll listen back through the interview and be like, oh, I don't even remember her saying that. That's great. That was a really good moment. And then usually it's very intuitive where I'm like listening to the interview and like looking through the B-roll. So B-roll is just kind of like supporting shots where you're just like, oh, I know I want to like film her with her daughter. I know I want to film her like setting up the gear, like packing her car, you know, supporting shots that are not accompanied by any kind of like voiceover. So I'll be like watching that and like, it'll just strike me as like, oh, this audio clip from the interview really narrates super well this scene that was captured in the B-roll. So I'll kind of start flagging that stuff in my mind. Sometimes I'll even like I mean, you can see all the different sequences that I have. I have like clean cut 1, clean cut 2, and then I have like it all divided out by different days or what kind of content it is. Sometimes I'll have like sequences that are like good tidbits or something. I'll name it something like that so that I don't, or where it is or whatever. So yeah, definitely it grows out of the material itself. And then obviously it's very guided by the questions that I've asked. Like I have a very specific agenda as a researcher and as a filmmaker. I'm trying to get at these particular issues that I think are interesting and important to illuminate. So obviously what she ends up saying has been guided by the questions that I've asked too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So I think what we're going to do is, because of the time, we're not going to do the breakout room. So we're going to have a group Q&A and bring TYGAPAW back on. But actually, one thing that was mentioned in the video that you shared was the artists sort of really wanting to be able to produce their own music with their own voice involved. And I know that a lot of those participating have the barriers of figuring out how to kind of go about producing their own sound. And there's the barriers of learning these platforms and kind of trying to develop and experiment with your own style before that you kind of have the confidence to kind of self-release your own music, which is something that both of you have done and worked on for years and have been very successful with for your own audiences. And in one of your Bit Rosy interviews, TYGAPAW said, I realized that if I wanted to have more control over the type of music that I am involved with, that I'm probably going to have to do it myself. So with that in mind, and then we can jump into the Q&A and talk maybe a little bit about your collaborations together. Is there any advice that you would give to artists that are, beginning or have been experimenting with these platforms? And, what kind of guidance would you give them for those who have not quite yet self-released something of their own?
It's thank you. With Adele, I honestly, very early on, Adele reached out really early in my career, and when I was like very much establishing the way how I want my music to be presented, how I want to make the music. The reason why I was shifting more into an independent DIY style of creating it was as I was in a band and I had a manager, and we they were very pushing towards sort of like a package presentation of things, and I felt a bit like restricted in my creative voice. And so I think that happens quite a lot with mainstream artists who sign big record deals and then have what they initially were picked up for was like maybe like a demo that the label found on SoundCloud, or but then they never want to uphold the integrity of that person's work. They want to influence them based on like their stats or whatever formula works within charting music, where we live in a world where I feel artists really don't want to lose themselves in the process of the business making aspects of the music industry, like the capitalist portion of it, and that's why the intention was like moving forward that I knew it would be a difficult road, because of there's a lot of time, there's so many things that come into play with it, is that with your ethnicity, gender, and because I occupy a space that's very, I love watching that video because I feel like that's incredibly inspiring. Her words, just like knowing that she's taking that initiative to learn production aspects of it. Like she's a vocalist, a instrumentalist, and producing allows you to have that creative control when you are the one in the seat of you can like create, construct, arrange, compose your pieces, your work. So that was really beautiful to see, Adele, that your latest episode.
Yeah, and I think Quilla had a similar experience where she was on a big label and like ran into all kinds of problems with not having like creative control over her own tracks, like recording a whole album and then the label saying, no, we're not going to release it, or we're not going to do what you want to do with it. And so she also was like, okay, I'm going to start my own label. So I think that like taking the control into your own hands is like, I mean, a lot of people are just sort of, it's just sort of, you're not forced into it, but you just have so much more autonomy and creative control. Yeah,
but with that, there's so much risk involved, but as well as like, but you know, there's that aspect of like it's overwhelming to learn like skills that, well, she is right, like learning production is like it's an investment in a journey, a lifelong journey of like learning this new skill because of how layered it is, how in depth, how deeply you can like go down that road, a path, and like learning, you know. So but if you're a person that is really here for that journey, I think that it's very rewarding. I will tell you that much from speaking from experience. It just, I'm really happy that I invested that time and energy into learning how to produce music. And that push was coming from, because in the band, I wasn't the producer. I played guitar and like I wrote songs on the guitar. And just I would sit in on sessions and record in sessions and be very, very curious, but no one really broke anything down for me as, you know, as we were like going through the process of recording an album. And I found that to be also like a form of gatekeeping, like when they, you know, they don't want to teach you what the process is of like recording and like, so that you, the musician, can understand what the process is, and so ultimately that you can learn to do it yourself. I think that there's an intention in keeping certain knowledge away from people, so that, you know, it's the nature of the beast in terms of certain industries, just like being very limited and also like an avenue that men feel that they like want to solely occupy that space, where that's another, you know, like where she spoke about being in a very male dominated field. And yeah, it's just beautiful to know. And at this point where we have a lot of access to information and these platforms, programs that put us as mentors, we can help each other, we can like share our process and
totally,
you know, like, yeah.
One thing like that I've been thinking about a lot, and it's something that Quilla says towards the end of the video, is letting go of perfectionism. And that's something that I've really struggled with, is like feeling like, especially in these sort of very gatekeepery fields where you feel like in order to participate, you have to know everything and you have to display that you have the knowledge and like it has to be perfect. And I have just been like letting that go. I'm just like, okay, fuck that, sorry. But just like, this is not helping me like learn the software that I need to learn, like make the mistakes I need to learn, like fail at a lot of things, and just realize that failing is a part of the journey and failing is a part of the process of getting better. But like, no, I just like made a sign in my room that says like ditch perfectionism, because I think perfectionism is a way of like keeping people out. It's very hegemonic, like it's very part of all the things that we don't like about our society. And I think that that's been a huge thing for me just internally. Just letting go of that and just being like, I'm gonna mess up. Or if someone like, if I'm in my, I mean, even now, like I'll be recording someone in my own studio and I'll notice myself, like I'll go to the bathroom and be like, you've got this, like, don't worry about it. It's your space. Like, just like go for it. But I'll still kind of have moments where I'm like, oh my God, do I know how to do everything? Do I have the answer to every question? And I'm like, maybe I don't. Who cares? Like, if someone's going to judge me for that, that's their problem. So I think, but you know, it took a lot of time to get to that point, and I'm still working on it. So, but that's been a big help for me. Is like letting go perfectionism.
I think that's definitely something we can all probably relate to some extent. As we start to close out this event, I just want to thank everybody again for joining us. And also, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or mute yourselves and ask our wonderful artists and speakers. Well, I guess I'm curious, as we're wrapping up, can each of you talk a little bit about something that you have coming up, or anything that you want to plug for our audience to learn more about or look forward to?
Okay, I'll start. I think I mentioned. Well, I think that two things I can speak on is the documentary that I'm a part of. That's very inspirational. It's very important for the moment, highlighting women who are producers, DJs, who occupy space, like talk about their stories, and you know, a lot of. It's so important, and I wish that it was like more available at this time in terms of streaming. But like right now, it was just like premiered at Toronto International Film Festival, and it's called Underplayed, and directed by Stacey Lee. It's a really credible documentary around the gender disparity and like fighting inequality in electronic dance music particularly. And that's hopefully will be available online for streaming by the end of the year, or I think they're working on it for the next month or so. And my next, my album, my full length album will be out on November, the first Friday in November, the Bandcamp, so.
Looking forward to it, and I can't wait to watch that documentary as well. It looks really amazing. Adele, do you have anything that you want to plug for?
Yeah, sure. If any of you, I mean, I'm guessing most of you are in Brooklyn, right? Yeah, New York. I have a new band that's a cumbia surf band, and we're actually doing an outdoor show on Sunday at the Old Stone House, which is in Park Slope. I think it'll be fun. Come, wear your mask, stay far apart. It's our second outdoor show, and it's just been really great to play outside and play with people and like actually engage with the real audience. Yeah, and then I'll actually be doing the score for a new film that's going into production now. It's also called Kia, like related to Quilla. It's about the first Peruvian woman to go to NASA. So I'm really excited about working on that music.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And we've dropped, I think, links to both your websites in the chat. So for people who want to learn more about TYGAPAW and Adele Fournet, please follow our links. And Gina, do you want to close us out for the evening?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just wanted to say on behalf of Bespoken and the International Contemporary Ensemble, just a huge thank you to everyone for joining us today, and a gigantic thank you to Adele and TYGAPAW for sharing your art with us and your process. It is truly inspiring, and it is even more inspiring to know that during all of this time this past year that you are continuing to create. You're releasing albums, you're presenting events, and that is something that is so necessary and needed right now. And I can't wait, and we all can't wait to continue to see what you are creating next. And for those who joined us on YouTube Live, also a huge thank you. And we hope to see everyone at a future event. So now at this time, I really just want to invite everyone to unmute yourselves And let's give a huge round of applause to Adele and TYGAPAW for their incredible artistry.
Thank you guys.
Thank you everyone so much, and we will see you soon. Have a great night.
All right, thank y'all. Thank you for organizing.